Hey there, I'm Rebecca Ohanes, and this is The Outlook, COAF's one and only podcast discussing rural Armenia. In today's episode, we'll focus on the demographic trends in Debet village. By now, most of you know that Debet is currently in the midst of a transition. So naturally, when taking on the task of improving the infrastructure, economic progress, and residents' capacity to maintain these changes, you're gonna need a system and data to back up your objectives. One of the first things you need to do is figure out the demographics of the targeted community to estimate the extent of the work to be done. Now, since this is a topic I know nothing about, I've invited our COAF Village Programs Manager, Anahit Hakobyan, to enlighten us and inform us about the population trends in Debet. Hey Anahit, I'm thrilled to have you here. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey Rebecca, thank you for having me again.
So Anahit, before I start badgering you about numbers, I'd like to know how you research demographic trends. Taking Debet as an example, what sources did you use to get the exact figures?
When talking about Debet, Rebecca, there was not much data available when we started. And the one available turned out not to be very accurate. So we decided to conduct a house-by-house census of all the residents in Debet. One of our doctors, Lucina Antonian, volunteered and did this with the help of the local nurse, as they were also doing the primary health screening in the village. So now we have a detailed database with all the demographic data, including social and health conditions of each inhabitant in the village.
So you went house by house and established a database. What were your findings? Could you share with us some figures such as the number of population, households, age, and gender distribution?
Sure. Debet has 790 people in 176 households as of now. 52% of the population are men and 48% are women, so it's pretty much evenly distributed gender-wise. The average age in the village is 37. We can consider Debet a relatively young village, also taking into account the school students and the population ratio. Students being 15% of the population, which is much higher than the usual 10% or less in other villages.
And what did your population research reveal about the challenges the community faces?
The most serious issue I would stress is the permanent and seasonal migration. When you look at the demographic map we made during the house-by-house census, you could easily spot the empty houses, and unfortunately we have a lot of those, 81 as of now. And 25% still pursue migrant seasonal work annually. Surely there are other major challenges as well, such as the poor water supply, housing conditions, being excluded from the financial system, professional capacities, and others which were revealed during this census.
I see, but pinpointing the problems Debet is facing through data-based research is only the beginning, right? What measures has COAF taken so far to fix these problems?
Of course, it's only the beginning. The collected data guided us to design the specific projects and work with the municipality to come up with new policies. To start with the so-called formal heart of the community, we've fully transformed the municipality building, including the working area, meeting room, a brand new library with the Karadarek NGO. And what is more, Debet village now has its own brand. The municipality now has access to a fiber optic, and we work to digitize the public services. Monthly town hall meetings with the villagers, weekly meetings with the village council and the municipality staff are happening regularly now. We've also launched large-scale projects such as renovation of the house roofs, building new houses for families from Artsakh, Pilot Road, and so on.
So these are the things we've already accomplished. What about COAF's present efforts? What are we up to now?
We've just started financial support projects for small businesses in the village. A new beauty salon will soon be opened. The specialists are being trained now. The brand new smart bus is already standing. Improvement of the overall transportation system will follow. The waste management system establishment is in process with the new recycle bins and waste trucks. Building the new playground with the park is actively progressing, so the life in the village, the projects are happening simultaneously, and one of the major projects I would like to stress is the reconstruction of the school, and it is starting very soon.
So with all of this going on, are there some areas that COAF hasn't covered yet, but it tends to tackle in the near future?
Well, actually, we plan to tackle every possible aspect of life in Debet. I guess the one not covered at all yet is the cultural aspect, which we plan to target in the long run. I'm sure we'll talk about it in other episodes.
I look forward to it. But before I let you go, Anahit, there's one thing I'd like to ask you that's been on my mind since the first day I've joined COAF. How much time and effort does it take to achieve the goal of rural population growth? Or maybe to put it differently, what does it take to sustainably avoid or at least minimize rural-urban migration?
Oh, that's a very interesting question, actually. To achieve population growth, Rebecca, first you need, to minimize and preferably put an end to the migration from the village, being it within Armenia or out. Second, you need to impact the actual growth of the population. So how do we do this? Well, our business support programs and local job creations in the infrastructure projects in particular, and the whole development initiative in Debet in general, aim at preventing the migration. And as I said, we already observed some results. And to impact the growth of the population, we designed a pro-natal policy to increase the birth rate by offering the families financial support for each child until the age of 3. The support program will go beyond financial, including health and educational components. And to answer your question about how much time it will take, with Debet, we aim to increase Debet's population from 711 to 1,000. It's around 40% change in 5 years. In the past 11 months, we have had a 9% increase by providing permanent housing for families from Artsakh, and we continue to work and aim for more, for sure.
Wow, 9%, that's really something. I think I'd like to end the episode on that positive note. Thank you again, Anahit, for joining us. And thank you, dear listeners, for tuning in. If you want to stay in the loop about COAF's work, subscribe to our channels on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. Talk soon.